of a frozen moment there. But good evening and welcome back to Extra Tyne on the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. As you can see, there's just the three of us. We can make it. No, I'll not start singing that. That's the numbers will start dropping dramatically.
I'll get me later out and
yes, please do. Yes, as you can see, there's just the three of us this evening. I'm joined by Scott and by Ian. Raza, God rest his soul. No, not God rest his soul, but he's off in church today. He's off to church. He's doing his bit. I think he probably made some prayers before the West Ham game and they were answered, so he had to go and pay his dues. You know what I mean? And Laura's otherwise engaged as well. But best wishes to both of them. But we've got the best here with us tonight. I think we'll all agree. Scott, I know you did a bit of a review of the game last night, but fantastic last night. Did you enjoy that? I'm sure you did.
I absolutely enjoyed every last, apart from I'd say the last 25 minutes of the first half, I enjoyed every second of that game. I don't know if that works, but there you go. Just a really good performance all round. Two really good performances on the bounce, I think, and it's long may it continue.
Yes, and thanks for the name check as well. I always like my predictions for the season to be recognised. Yes, I was pumping for that third place in the Champions League comfortable slot. So cheers for the shout out. But do go and check that out. It was a really good listen. I was listening to it as I went around the supermarket this morning. There you go.
Oh,
and
nice.
Of course, there we have Ian there. Ian, how are you doing? Where did you watch the game last night?
I'm doing very, very good, and I just watched it in the house. I was quite chilled out. Usually Sophie hates watching football with us because I get very animated, but I was very, very chilled out last night. Just a side note, if anyone sees us like doing that, I haven't been rubbing narcotics. I'm just making sure that there's no oregano in my teeth because I've just had to scran a pizza.
Oregano.
It's definitely oregano. Honestly, these pizzas though, unreal. Just made the whole family them, and now they're upstairs watching. So, been a bit of a mad rush, but
hello everybody. Hello everybody. Right, well, we'll keep an eye on Oregano Watch, and we'll see how that develops as we go through this evening's show. But thank you very much for those people who've joined us tonight live, and obviously those people who watch a little bit later on the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification button as well. That really helps us out. Share with a friend. They share with their friend, and they share with their friend. So spread the word about Gallowgateshots, and of course, Extra Time, because you know it makes sense. And thank you to those people who've joined us live. El Grande Salmon, who give us a good shout for tonight's topic, which we'll talk about just in a few moments. Tom, Blue Rhythm Boy. We've got Dan. We've got Stu, Tony Timebridge. I like that. And yes, God bless Raza, of course. So thank you very much for those people for joining us live, and obviously those people who will watch us later on. So I suppose we might as well get in and just quickly reflect on last night's game. I know, Scott, like I said before, you've already done a match review with Chris. It was really, really good. So really good listen, a really good watch. But Scott, after sort of letting the dust settle for 24 hours or so, I mean, it was a great performance. And who was your kind of man of the match that really stuck out to you in that game?
It's a tough one. I think Fabian Schär for me was solid. Obviously, he played that worldly of a pass for Joelinton's first goal as well.
Did he not shank it? Was that not? Did he not shank it according to?
They said on Match of the Day he shanked it, but if you watch the match cam or the highlights have done, Joelinton's shouting for it. He points where he wants it, and Shaw's like, "All right, there you go, have at it." And it's but he was not just that pass; he was solid throughout the entire game. Him and Botman, to be fair, but it's not very often you give it to a defender when you score 5 goals, but I'm giving it to a defender when we've scored 5 goals. So there you have it. But Fabian Schär for me, not only a sexy man, but he's starting to play some sexy football as well.
Yeah,
so, perfect.
He looks in unbelievable form. It almost like with him and Botman, it's like just a given now that they're going to have a good game. Like we had a bit of a shady patch, and then all of a sudden, you don't even think about or worry about it. Botman had that little wobble against Nottingham Forest, but like almost take it for granted. I hope we're not getting down that road, hopefully, but do you know what I mean?
It's not normal being a Newcastle fan and having a good defence, is it? It just doesn't seem right. I don't know what to do with myself.
Very unsettling indeed. Ian, what was your take on the game last night? I mean, were you a bit like me? I was a little bit worried when I saw Jared Bowen running the legs off Burn in the first 5 minutes.
Seconds.
I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a long night. But it didn't turn out that way. So what was your take on the game?
I thought we started very cautiously. I thought they started like a house on fire. Obviously, Bruno intercepted, nearly hit the post, and then they had the rebound, which got put over. And I think sort of the first 5 minutes, I think they were all gung ho. And if I'm honest, I think the goal that we scored arguably was against the run of play. But then you go 2 goals up and you think, right, we'll just coast. And I just think there was maybe a spell of, I'd say, 15, 20 minutes where they just took the foot off the gas and let them back in it. But then great start of the second half coming from Murphy's press. And it was, shall I tell you what it was nice to see? Eddie Howe actually animated, because I've never really sort of thought of him as an angry manager, because in effect, really, he hasn't had to get angry because we've been brilliant all season. But it was just nice to see that we're I think at this point, we might have been 2-0 up rather than conceding. Things weren't going the way he wanted to, and he just looked furious, which I love. It just shows that he's not going to be a pushover. But yeah, second half, I thought we coasted. We played some really, really good football. That Murphy shot where Fabianski, one of the best bits of football that I've seen. It was like one touch, and that all came as well from Botman shanking it across his own box. We'll recover. Honestly, my heart was in my arse when I seen that. I thought, and then Trippier picks it up, and then it's just one touch stuff. And shame that there wasn't a goal at the end of it. But again, I think maybe with the exception of Burn, I thought he had one of his poorer games. I think the other 10 really. Any one of them could have got man of the match, but I'm in agreement with Scott. I think Shaw, and a massive shout for St. Maximum as well. I thought he was really, really good. Really
popular in the comments. That I think it's just one of those. You could have any, you could justify any one of the, I suppose, the on-field or on-pitch 10 being man of the match. I think Burn walking the ball out, that was a bit random in the second half. That was like a bit random, but. No, I think it was one of those performances where you couldn't fault the lads at all. And I suppose not wanting to kind of bring Steve Bruce into the occasion, but we might as well. We haven't given a mention for a long time, but it's interesting to see. I couldn't tell you whether we won a game under Steve Bruce 5-1 or 5-0 or by 4 clear goals. I'm sure somebody will tell me, but I imagine after the game, the interview would have been, oh, we were tremendous, we did this, everything we told the lads they put into place. But, Scott, what does it tell you about what a special manager we have, about Eddie Howe's reaction after the game being almost underwhelmed with the performance?
It's almost like he's expecting it. Like he's almost just expecting his performances, and it doesn't. You always find with Steve Bruce that if we won, he took that as a massive shock. Like he was playing for the draw or just trying not to lose. And if you win, well, that's a turn up for the books. But Eddie Howe plays to win, and he knows what he's doing in terms of, getting these lads to play the way he wants them to play. And we talk about this on the preview and the reaction today, but just need to look at St. Maximum to see exactly what he's capable of in terms of Eddie Howe managing players and changing them into the type of player that he wants. I feel like every single week you see Eddie Howe getting interviewed, and the interviewers are trying to get something out of him, and he's just having none of it as well. So he definitely Champions League competitors now. He goes, well, we've won this game, and it's on to the next one, and we take one game at a time. He's starting to sound a bit like a broken record, but I kind of like that he keeps that integrity and just keeps, the wheels turning. Some of the players are starting to slip a little bit when they're getting interviewed, and you saw Callum Wilson, mentioning that absolutely we're definitely wanting this, and it's nice to see the players believing. This isn't Ted Lasso or anything, but you can tell that they are starting to believe that actually 3rd, 4th place is actually what we probably deserve off from this season, because we've by far been one of the best teams in the league. well, I'd probably say the third best team in the league if you look at the league table right at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite fairly confident that the third place is 100% achievable. So, Ian, do you think it's going to be a case of it's only us that can mess it up from this point in? Do you think, that Tottenham and Man United are going to have to scrap over the fourth place? And, we're in, aren't we? Surely.
It's definitely in our hands. It's not like we're looking at other results elsewhere. Oh, well, we need these to lose, really. We're in control. We're in the box seat. And I think what Scott was saying, it's easy to get carried away and think of next season and Champions League and all the glory that would bring. But Eddie Howe, and it's not fake either. It's not something he's just saying for saying its sake. It's his mentality that it's one game. Now we'll just concentrate on the next one. You're only as good as your last game, and a lot can happen. I think there's 10 games left now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the way it is, I mean, you called it last year at the end of last season. You said fourth wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility. I think at this minute in time, I think if you finished anything less than fourth, as much as it's still a massive, massive achievement from where we are in this project, it would feel almost heartbreaking not to get that. So don't get us wrong, there's going to be some tough games coming up, and I think the next two are going to be very, very testing, Brentford and Villa away.
Yeah.
But then you look at the games, I think we've got a game in hand on Spurs, 3 points ahead, and we've got them to play at home. So all being well, results go our way, that could be 9 points ahead of Spurs. So it's definitely within our hands, and like I say, I think it's thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, I mean, 9 points is, I know we famously threw away a 12-point lead, but 9 points is, with history telling us, we're deep into the season, best defense. I think, Scott, you were saying last night we've only conceded 20 goals, I think, so far this season. Goal difference is worth an extra point, so we're effectively 11 points in front of teams like Liverpool and Spurs. I think they're going to. No, I have a very good friend who's a Spurs fan, and I keep saying to him, nobody hates Spurs like Spurs fans do. Like, I do have a soft spot for Spurs, but I mean they're not in a great place at the minute.
I think there's a few Arsenal fans who would disagree with you, Roger. I think there's a few Arsenal fans that hate Spurs as well.
Probably true. Just picking up on something Ian said there, Scott, about being only as good as your last game, and the quandary on forward players now. We're going into the Brentford game, very quick turnaround. I thought he would start Wilson and Joe Linton. Do you think Isak comes back in, or do you think Isak maybe gets another little rest? And which player do you think is probably more in tune with what we need to do against Brentford? I mean, I'm not entirely sure.
Brentford are really, if you want to talk they're a really good side. Let's put it that way. They play some really nice football. They kind of remind us of us, if that makes any sense. Like, they kind of play a similar style to us. I suppose the one weakness I say they would have is when they come up against skillful players, like your likes of Bruno and probably Isak, Saint-Maximin. They don't tend to do too well. So I would probably look to do a swap again and start Isak. They're not great at defending, long shots or through balls from what I've seen this season. So, I think Callum Wilson's the type of player who would rough up a defence, and I think they've got a pretty solid defence that won't take that. I think you want someone like Isak who can get the ball, turn with it, or control it, and we've seen it in the goal against Man U. Where he took about 3 touches and took 3 players out of the game when we scored that second goal, I think it was. But on the flip side of that, if Callum Wilson starts, I've got no problem with that. I think it doesn't just seem because he's scored, but he actually seemed back on pace, which he hasn't done since the World Cup. He actually seems like he's back to, I think I put in the chat, like he's back to 100% fitness, which it's outstanding to have those 2 strikers. Touch wood that they don't have any injuries between now and the rest of the season. They guarantee us 3rd or 4th place, those 2 alone. And then you've got the rest of the team doing what they can do. It just adds to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say about being up to the pace of the game, up to speed. And the only thing I worry about with taking particularly Willock out of the team, for me, I mean, he was on probably his best, aside from when he came in and scored all those goals, he was on an amazing run in terms of his technical play, his pace, his penetration into really difficult areas against the opposition. But he's one of those players he needs to keep playing, and we've taken him out, he's been taken out the side now. He came back in and, played 30 odd minutes. But I think we've got to be careful with how we handle Willock and not let him have too much time out of the team, because he does take a little bit of time to get up to speed. And when he is up to speed, he's unreal. But Ian, would Willock come back in for you, or would you, what would you do for that Brentford game with a quick turnaround?
I genuinely don't know. And what's funny as well is maybe it's about a month ago when we had Joe Linton was suspended and had a couple of knocks. You are thinking like you're on the bare bones, you're arse, and now maybe it's a month later, it's a massive headache. Who's going to start? And I think sort of and I was watching Sky Sports News today as well. What they were picking up, I think, was Steve Howie actually was saying the starting 11 very, very good, but then there's no real depth. And now that you've got players that are available again, either through after suspension or recovered from injury, you've got the likes of Gordon to bring on, you've got the likes of Willock to bring on. You could, if Joe Linton didn't start, you've got him to bring on. Isaac, whether he starts or not, you've then got Wilson. So there's a massive, massive headache. I think I'm not. See, I would be harsh on dropping anyone as well. I don't think particularly the West Ham game was the best game by any stretch. But you've not really played that well and blown a team away 5-1.
Yeah.
Right? And then the game before that, I would say probably beats the Man City game. I think that's been my best performance under Eddie Howe for 90 minutes just sustained. So I'm glad I'm not Eddie Howe. I wouldn't mind being on his wage, but I'm glad I'm not. Glad I'm not him, because it's a massive headache to have, but it's a very, very nice headache to have. And for so often in the last however long, we've only who can fill in at left back? Like what centre forward can we play at centre half, because we're that short? And so it's a nice headache to have, but I genuinely wouldn't have a clue how the Brentford lineup would. The lineup for the Brentford game would go.
Yeah, I mean, I think just something that's kind of come into my mind and to kind of phrase is kind of hinting towards it. When they brought in this idea of 5 substitutes due to COVID, and then they kind of kept the idea on, I think I was pretty much dead against it in terms of it favours those teams with deep squads. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say we've got a deep squad, but I think for the way that we play and when we have that squad availability, it's absolutely amazing that we have, we can make those 3 or 4 changes, bringing on Gordon, Willock, Isak, we can bring on targets. So to bring those legs into the team, whereas formerly you look at the bench, you've got to bring 3 on and you're like, oh, who can I bring on? And invariably we'd have an injury. There'd be something else going on that would influence the types of substitutions we could make. So I think it's a really good point that, when we look at the bench and we have got that bit more depth, given that Miggy's still to come back as well, I think we can be really confident going into this back end of the season. And I think you're right. This game's tricky, but for me, I think the Villa game will be tricky. I think I said this before the other day. That'll be a really tricky game because they are on a really good upward trend, had a good result the other day. So that'll be a really interesting one. And I'm sure Villa Watch on Twitter will be full of the joys of spring, poking and probing every Newcastle fan that they can possibly do. So I actually quite like that account because it's quite funny. It makes me laugh every time I see it.
I think doesn't Big Frank run that? No, he doesn't. I think for me, Roger, in terms of the game at the weekend, what I would look to do, and again, I'm not Eddie Howe, but I would probably rest Sean Longstaff. They're quite a fast team, and I don't think he has the pace to deal with that. So I'd put Bruno in the middle, Botman at the back, and then bring Willock back in to be that legs, box.
Should be a song for that,
Should be a song, shouldn't it? I'd probably also take Burn and put Toggan, because Burn looked, he just looked exhausted by the end of that game. He didn't seem to have the legs. And I'd probably also look to start Gordon and maybe rest Murphy, because Murphy was good, but he was probably the outside of Dan Burn of the attack. He's probably the weaker of the players that we had. Not saying he played bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I said this in the review. You could see he's kind of playing to his limits.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more we can get out of Murphy in terms of like stepping up to the next level. So yeah, I think we have to rotate just because of the sheer quickness of the games, and this, if anything, is going to prepare very well for next season. Should we get into
exactly
Europe,
what I was about to say?
Like, you know, this is the players are going to have to accept that you're not playing every single game because you physically cannot.
Yeah.
Like, I know these are professional footballers and that's what they get paid to do, but still, your body tells you when you cannot play anymore, and some of these players don't listen to that, and that's when injuries come in. And I think we've got the best back team to be like, no, you need to rest. You need to have sit on the bench. You can come on at the, if we need you. But I think that's what he's playing with St. Maximin at the minute. Because I've noticed St. Maximin's coming off like 60, 70 minutes, even when he's having the game of his life, like he probably has done the last 2 games for us.
Yeah,
St. Maximin would be the last player you'd be thinking to take off, but he takes him off because he's resting him, and he's kind of giving him that run of games and bedding him back in. So yeah, I'd probably look at, like I said, giving Longstaff a bit of a rest, giving Byrne a bit of a rest, and bring on Target and Willock and see how that fares against a bit more of a pacey and a bit more of a counter-attacking team that Brentford are. Yeah,
and I think as well, Gordon's just been drip fed into the team, very much like Bruno and Botman at the start of the season. And I think the best of Gordon will be the start of next season. I think if he's injury free, gets a full run at pre-season, I think I really do think we've got a really good player on my hand. I think his output will really, really increase. So I think things are looking really good sort of going forwards in terms of that. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be a full preview to the Brentford and the Villa games coming up as well.
We are recording it after this, Roger.
So there you go. Stay tuned.
It's not live though, but we will be recording it. Yeah.
Yes. There's only few brave enough to go live, you know what I mean? So, or stupid enough. I'll let you decide which it is. Of course, a moment's quiet for big Frank Chipper as well. You know, his Twitter was taken down, but I believe he came back with a double P. So he wasn't too far off the air.
He should have waited until Monday. That would have been the ultimate. There you go.
Well, speaking of resurrections, we came up with this week. We thought I'd have a bit of an Easter theme of players who played for Newcastle. Don't worry how many games they've played. We've got over that. Players who play for Newcastle who maybe they came in with a lot of pomp and circumstance, but didn't quite hit the ground running. Didn't really live up to expectations initially, and were maligned by the fans. Maybe they were even loaned out in some cases, but came back to the club or came back into the team and became an integral part of whichever team they were in at the time. So we had some sort of a long list. We tried to generate a little bit of a long list, helped by people in the comments and of course on Twitter as well, and from the Gallowgateshots YouTube WhatsApp group. So I'll just throw some names out. I'll include the names that we've got, but I'll not say who you're going to go for. Of course, Justice for Boomsong. Blue Rhythm Boy, yes. Boomsong might have started okay, but he was an absolute shambles. But yeah, I've written. So now, obviously, you can see that myself, Ian, and Scott are very fresh faced. So we can't go back too far into players that we haven't necessarily seen play. It's a bit more difficult. So we do apologise maybe to some of our older viewers if there's a player that hasn't quite made the cut who you think, actually, they were crap when they came, but they did actually turn it around. So feel free to put those in the comments if you want. So a couple of lists, well, no particular order. I suppose the late, great Gary Speed. I remember when Gary Speed came from Everton. I think he was signed for a couple of million at the time, which was quite a lot of money. And he was played, I think, probably he was played out of position. So he was one who became quite integral. We'll explore some of these in a bit more detail. James Perch, Steve Howie, that was a suggestion from somebody in terms of his positional change, and he started off as a centre forward and became an excellent England international centre back. Nicky Butt, Jose Enrique, Colaccini, Graham Jones even got a shout as I think it was described as a bit of a shit sandwich.
Messiah, wasn't he?
A lot of expectation. Then he sort of went a bit down the pan, but then all of a sudden he's an England coach and he's an integral part of Eddie Howe's backroom staff. So big shout to him. Obviously Joe Linton, Miggy, Kevin Nolan was a late shout, and Johan Gouffran. But I'm sure there'll be plenty others came down in the list, and we'll try and get to those as we can. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few, and actually there's a lot of the time it's a lot of the names on there are players who've come from a different league or come from a different country that maybe struggled to adapt. I'm thinking particularly kind of Enrique, Colaccini, Gouffran, and some of those benefited from maybe playing in the championship when we were relegated. So I suppose if we quickly chat about Colaccini, I mean, a real club favourite going forwards these days, but he was a little bit of a figure of fun, Scott. He was a little bit of a player who was maybe a little bit of not everybody's favourite cup of tea when he first came.
No, he seemed a bit of a maverick when he first came, just did what he wanted, which you don't mind that from your attacking side of the play, but when the defenders are doing it, it does give you a bit of a squeaky bum time when you're watching the football. And then I think Stephen Taylor probably was the one player that maybe calmed him down a bit, and kind of he realised that Stephen Taylor,
ironic.
Which is ironic, yeah. But Stephen Taylor probably wasn't as good as Colaccini, and Colaccini realised that and thought, okay, I need to start playing here because I'm not carrying him. That's probably the worst way to say it, but I need to make up for what he can't do, because what he gives in other areas I can't give. So I think, Colaccini obviously turned into a club legend in my eyes, if only for the song and the perm, but obviously also for his silky skills on the football pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great comeback because he was a bit of a joke figure, and then he was he was a player of the season, Ian, in the championship, and then did he make the team of the season in the Premier League when we got promoted back to the Premier League? I think he did. I mean, Colaccini was, we all wanted curly hair.
He might have. I can't remember if it was that season or the season we finished fifth. It was, but I do remember him being it. But just to echo what Scott said, he started off quite shit. Yeah, I'm sure it was him that tried an overhead kick clearance from the corner, started doing keepy uppies or something. Yeah, might be wrong.
I think he broke his back. He was out injured for a little while after that one.
But then became, like you say, a sort of the cornerstone of a solid defence, particularly in the championship, and alongside the likes of Jose Enrique. And like you say, he became a very, very solid defender, and probably, arguably, one of the best, or one of the best centre halves that we've had. So it was a nice turnaround, and I love the song as well. Great song.
Yeah, you can't beat the song. I'm going to come to one that came actually. I hadn't even thought about this one, but it came in the comments here. I'm sure the person will make themselves known. I can't scroll back too far. But Kevin Nolan, I remember his debut against Everton after the January transfer window. I think it was him and Ryan Taylor actually, and I don't think Ryan Taylor had a particularly great start to his time in Newcastle, and he's now an absolute legend and a friend of the channel as well. Scott, can you remember that sending off when I believe it was Victor Anichibi that he cut in half on his debut and was sent off?
I can't remember that. No, I don't remember.
I was at that game. Yeah, I remember.
I'm not good at this sort of thing, remembering individual things from games. But in terms of Kevin Nolan, obviously we all know how that turned out. And I think, like I said before, another player who benefited from the championship in terms of his club status. That season in the championship.
Yeah,
I think that's when the chicken wing dance started coming in as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In that season. So, but I'll let Ian talk more about Nolan. I think he remembers a bit more of it than I do. I'm a bit hazy on
that. What Roger said. I'm sure. I couldn't remember which team it was, but I remember he got sent off, and it was an absolutely horrible challenge as well.
The leg, I think.
Yeah. So you just thought, like, we've just signed a new player, like he's then went and done that. And you thought it was similar to what Shelby was like. He was getting sent off, and I know it wasn't early days Shelby was getting sent off, but just throughout his career. But like you say, it almost, not that I feel like he needed it, but it almost sort of like grounded him a bit, having that season in the Championship. And like I say, we built a very, very good core. Obviously, we had Nolan, centre mid, Colaccini, Andy Carroll had a very, very strong spine of the team. So yeah, another nice little turnaround story. And again, wrote himself into folklore with a Derby Day hat-trick. So
yeah. Now I'm just sort of making some little notes about trying to think: is there a link between these players like that start off? Is there a common factor between them all? And I'm just trying to make a note of the managers that signed them. And then when did their redemption come? So if I go to Speed, it was Dalglish that signed Gary Speed. Perch, we'll come on to him in a second because he's my pick. Butt was signed by Souness, I believe. Enrique was a large part of his career was under Kinnear, Colaccini, Kinnear, Joe Linton, Steve Bruce, Miggy came under. Rafa, and then kind of staggered against. When he had Bruce. Nolan, again, I think he was under Kinnear, possibly. Gouffran, when he came, he was a bit of a shout. And I suppose he was Pardew. He was a bit mixed, wasn't he? But it does seem sometimes when a change of coach comes, that maybe his players, they get their second chance, and that kind of kicks them on a little bit. So there's a few shouts for Warren Barton, which is a bit of a random one as well. I think he started poorly. I think somebody said he started poorly, kept on averagely, then post-career became popular because of his Ashley criticism, which I suppose, And then there's a reverse one as well, which we should probably do an episode on. Sissoko went from being like probably one of the greatest
debut ever.
Ever, and then to being probably one of the least liked players that have played for Newcastle in the modern era, I would say. So let's get down to our picks then. I suppose since we are fresh from the West Ham victory, I'm going to go to Ian first. Ian, your choice. I'm sure it'll be very popular with a lot of fans currently at Newcastle. Who's your pick for the Hall of Fame?
I think there was only when this sort of topic came up, there was no ambiguity. I can't even speak. Ambiguity. That's the one in the topic, and it's got to be Joe Linton. I don't think there's ever been a turnaround quite like it. I genuinely think it's a bigger turnaround than Christ dying and then coming back to life. That's how big it is. Which, like, obviously at the time he was the record signing. If I'm honest, I didn't know much about him through mismanagement or not knowing what his correct position was. You just thought, there's like, it pops up on sort of my history on my phone of like tweets I've sent out, and in the early days of Joe Linton, it was along the lines of, I'm sure my mum would get in ahead of him, and it just, I know it was a little bit later on, but like things like when he's in the box and he has a shot and he ends up kicking the ball off his own head, like he looked horrendous, and you're thinking you've paid 40 million for that.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, one chilly December night, Kieran Clark just decided to get sent off, and like I say, with the second coming of Christ, but for a little while you thought, it's maybe because he's been asked to do a job and he's going to try his hardest there, and then he'll sort of taper off. But I genuinely, and this isn't an exaggeration, I don't think I've seen him have a bad game since he moved into centre midfielder. He's an absolute battering ram. He even looks confident on the ball. So when he was picking the ball up and trying to attack the box, yes, he had the endeavour, but you just thought, well, he's just going to like run down a blind alley or give it away. Now, when he picks it up, sort of, if it's in our half, he makes those driving runs and shifts for forward. Bit of a shithouse as well. Got a bit of a temper on him. So I just genuinely don't know the wonders of and the miracle that is Joe Linton. But now you would say 40 million is an absolute steal, and I probably wouldn't sell him for 3 times that, because I think he's that important as well. And what we need to remember, I think he's only still 24, 25, so he's still very, very young. He's still got a lot to learn and can hopefully progress and become which is absolutely mad that I've put Joe Linton and world class in the same sentence. But I genuinely think he could go on to being a world class centre midfielder.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be that far away from it. I'm defeating myself, but he can't be that far away from a Brazilian call-up, surely, Scott.
You'd expect it, wouldn't you? But then you've got to think Bruno can't even get in that side, and no disrespect to Joe Linton, there's a bit of a gulf between Joe Linton and Bruno in terms of when it comes to skill and ability. But I mean, I think we're going to need Fred to just kind of lose a leg or something before Joe Linton gets a call, because that Brazilian manager just seems to pick him no matter what.
Although Ancelotti's just got the job there, hasn't he?
Has he got that now? I saw rumours of it. Yeah,
I don't know if it's confirmed, but I'm fairly certain he's going. So maybe he likes him from the day. Was Ancelotti manager when Joe Linton played for us for Everton?
No.
Was
that? He would have been. I don't know. If,
was he striker Joe
Linton? Yeah, so I don't know what he's seen there, but I think he's certainly going in the right direction to get a call up, whether it's for the even just a friendly run out like what Botman almost got last week or 2 weeks ago. We don't know, but hopefully he gets something. And it would be nice for him and Bruno to go together, because they seem to get a bit of a bromance brewing, the Brazilian bromance, if you will. So it'd be nice to see, because he silenced Paqueta yesterday as well a few times, Joe Linton. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be getting in that squad.
Well, I suppose from one Brazilian to another, I'm gonna step in there with my suggestion. Another Brazilian that had a really amazing redemption arc. He was the first player to be booked in his first 5 Premier League games, and it is, of course, Perchinho. I mean, what a player! Sort of very underwhelming signing from Nottingham Forest, I believe. He was a bit of a figure of fun, probably for the fans and for the media. There was a lot of attention on the fact that he'd conceded. He'd received a lot of these yellow cards and couldn't deal with the pace of the game. I think he was playing in random positions as well, but it says a lot about these, like Joe Linton, like a lot of the players on this list, that they must have some character. They've got to be able to have, by and large, 50,000 people when most of these players were playing for us in our year anyway, to have all those people doubting you, to moaning when you get the ball, and an intake of breath whenever you approach the ball, and then all of a sudden you can turn it around. I think it's absolutely, it speaks to the professionalism of some of these players. And Perchinho I think he epitomizes that. He was a player that didn't come with any fanfare, he didn't come with any expectation, but he was well below what we thought we were needing at the time. But his adaptability, his versatility, and to be able to play in lots of different positions, and being able to play in defensive midfield in the Premier League, for a team that was, we weren't. I think we were back in the Premier League for one season. I think it was when he came, and he really, really turned things around. And I'm sure he had a song. I was trying to think whether he had a song or not, but I'm sure he must have had a song, surely. So yes, Perchinho would be my nomination, and I'm going to put 4 on the. I'm going to put 4. So I'm going to do an extra one when Scott has finished. So we've got 4 to add to the pool, because it's a nice round number,
Was his song, Roger? We've got Perchinho. I'm sure that was his song.
Might just been as simple as that. Yes, yes, we've got Perchinho. It might have been that. So if anybody can, I'm sure. Yeah, maybe it is just we had Perchinho. Yeah, possibly it was. So he got his own song. And I think he's still playing now. I think he's 30, 37, 38. I think he was at Mansfield. I think he's
Mansfield, I think it is.
So, so my shout is Perchinho. Welcome to Paul Cox as well in the comments there, a new member of the channel. And you can become a member by paying £2.99 a month. It really helps the channel to grow. And, put out more content and put out better content as well. So thank you to those people who are already members, and thank you to those people who just joined as well. And thank you for joining us live. So, Scott, I'll hand back to you. Mike Percino, and who is your shout for Hall of Fame for the player with a redemption arc?
So it's another South American, but not from Brazil. This one's from Paraguay. And he is Paraguayan, isn't he? I've got that wrong. Yeah. When I said that, I was like, no, he's not. I second guessed myself. It is none other than Mr. Smiley, Miggy Almiron. Mr. Smiley. I mean, have you ever seen him not smile? Apart from when he cried, I think the first game he played when he was crying when we got beat. Or maybe it was the second. There was one of the games where we were winning. I can't remember who we were playing, and we inevitably got beaten. I think that was when he tried to lob the keeper and hit the post. And that was, I mean, he came with, a little bit of promise, and we all kind of believed in Rafa, just thinking, do you know what? He doesn't pick bad players, and he knows what he's doing. And this lad came along.
Matt Sells.
He looked like, well, yeah. Well, no, I'm talking, that's what we thought. I'm not saying that's what happened. But to be honest, it took a good, I think it was 38 games before he got his first goal. So you would have made your list, Roger, for last week, 38 games. And then he just, I don't know if it was Rafa leaving or if it was Steve Bruce coming in or what it was. He actually started to become a bit of a joke, not just to us as fans, but also to the rest of the league. And we saw that with, the comments from Jack Grealish, which I'm sure now he absolutely regrets saying what he said, because this season, it's like Mickey's been drinking from Michael Jordan's secret flask that he gives them at halftime on Space Jam, because he's absolutely flying. I think he's still our top scorer. I think he's got 11 or 12. So I think Wilson got his 10th last night. So Mickey's still up there. He's obviously getting assists, and the goals he's scoring. You wouldn't. I remember watching Mickey a couple of seasons ago and just being like, this kid's got no power in his shot at all. How is he even going to be able to kick the ball? It looked like the ball was hurting him when he was kicking it. In this season, he's just turned into a finishing master. He can just slotting it in left, right, and centre. I will say, he doesn't have a right foot. He could cut that off, and he'd still be as good as he is.
Standing on only.
Yes, it's a balancing foot, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, he's had such a turnaround this season, and I hope it continues. Obviously, he's been out with a bit of an injury recently, and I hope that doesn't hinder any progress that he has been making. But yeah, for me, it's Mickey Almiron. I mean, he's just such a likable character as well in terms of the person he is, and I think it's been such a good comeback.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that in a lot of the comments, we've had mentions for Longstaff, for Murphy, Murfinho, and it is telling maybe, and even Shaw to a degree, who were maybe just kind of lost their way. And coming back to what we were talking about earlier on in the show about Eddie Howe and his coaching ability to get these players playing in a way that is beyond anything they've probably ever done before, is testament to the coaching of Eddie Howe and his leadership and his coaching team as well, by including Mad Dog Tyndall as well. Can't miss him out. I
think Kieran Trippier's had a big hand in Miggy Almiron's resurgence as well. I think you can see he's always talking to him on the pitch. He's always kind of telling him what he thinks he should be doing and where he should be going. And also, I think with a lot of these players like Joe Linton, like Miggy, like Shaw, even, you put better players around them, and they just inevitably become better players themselves because they've got less pressure on them to do what they need to do. So I think there's a few different factors into it. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, it's wise probably to mention Trippier, because he is one of those players, like you say, his leadership, but he just makes players around him better because of the positions that he never shies away. So a lot of the time players can look bad because they haven't got options, whereas Trippier always makes himself available. He encourages. I overheard. I'm trying to think which game it was. I think it was the last home game that we played. It might have been the Wolves game, maybe. So maybe it was the Man United game. And I just caught over the pitch side microphone.
Yeah.
Somebody a player was a little bit in trouble, and what you might end up doing is just kicking it at the east stand, little Rose Head, just to get out of trouble, and we'll reset and we'll restart. And I think it must have been Murphy, I think it was, in front of Trippier that game. And he just kind of knocked a ball sort of just towards Man United's box. And we lost possession of the ball, but actually we lost it in a fairly, non-threatening area. And I heard Trippier going, "Yep, that's a good ball." He said something like, "That's a good ball," or "Well done," where we got Man United on the turn rather than like lobbing it in and end up with a throw-in on our halfway line. He actually played a bit more of a sensible ball, and we could then press Man United a little bit further into their territory rather than just losing the ball, which I think we might have done a lot of times probably under someone like Rafa as well. We might have done that, but I think having a player like Trippier, he makes those players better. He's definitely made, he builds relationships really quickly with players. His and Miggy's relationship was brilliant, and is brilliant, and he is with Murphy. You can see there's an understanding there. That is just testament to what a player we have in our hands, and it's a shame he's not a couple of years younger, but I'm sure we'll get. So
it's funny you say that, because I always think when we were playing Miggy on the right and he had Matt Ritchie behind him constantly barking at him through the entire game, I always thought that was really bad for Miggy, and he really didn't like that. And I just kind of got the impression that him and Miggy never really clicked like he has done on the left with Trippier. On the right with Trippier. Sorry. I feel like the players around you just really helping, and I think Fisher has also said, actually being trained helps. Not just being in for 2 days a week and just kicking the ball about for a bit.
Yeah, that in it. It's weird how that turns out.
Funny.
Right, so we've got Miggy, we've got Percino, and we've got, of course, Joe Linton. I have a feeling he might come out on top, but I'm going to throw one in that I mentioned just before there. Gary Speed, one for the older members of the channel and older watchers. He did come in with I remember, I think I had a seat in the East Stand at the time, and he came in, and he's a good, solid Premier League player. And Dalglish played him on the left side of midfield, almost like left wing. And Speed was never the quickest of players. He was a very intelligent player, very, very fit, very aggressive player. But it was really, really, when he came in, it was noticeable. It was like, he's terrible. He used to get battered, absolutely battered. Yeah. I remember thinking, how is he getting in the side? Obviously, off the pitch, he was incredibly professional, good, a really good player, but he just, wrong manager, wrong position. And then I think he played under Ruud Gullit as well. Didn't necessarily pull up any trees under Ruud Gullit. And then, of course, the change of managers, like we said, with a lot of these players, Robson came in, made him, one of the blue chip, undroppable players. Yeah. And he had an amazing arc. I mean, for those maybe who are a bit young, who've never seen, Gary Speed play for Newcastle, try and see some footage of him, because he was an absolute behemoth in the centre of midfield. He was undroppable. And ironically, as Dan says, Speed wasn't very quick. So there you go. So he's my sort of fourth shout. Honourable mention, I suppose we've gone through a couple, but honourable mention for Nicky Butt, although he kind of, he soured his reputation a little bit after the, I think it was the Man United game in the semi-final, when he was all pally with their players, and then he went off to Birmingham City and then came back and was, he was an integral player for us. So shout to him. So there's a few players there that have had a good arc, a couple of managers that had a bit of an arc. Pardew came in and was much maligned, but he managed to turn things around. But then he kind of, I suppose he had a bit of an Everest ascent, and then a drastic decline when he was asked for his P45 on the front of the Chronicle. So yeah, I'm sure there's an episode in there as well. So our shouts for the Hall of Fame for players with a redemption arc are Joe Linton, Percino, Miguel Almiron, and Gary Speed. And of course, in the comments, if you've got any ideas on players that maybe we haven't done justice to, please do get involved. And of course, like and share the channel as well if you can. So there we go. So those are our four. So have a look on Twitter for our polls, and I'll give it to Toon Polls, and hopefully I'll get a retweet as well. and keep an eye on that. And we'll see in 24 hours how the vote has gone down with the people. Scott and Ian, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. I've had a very nice time, actually. 50 minutes.
Lovely little chat, hasn't it?
Lovely little chat. And of course, those people for joining us live this evening. Blue Rhythm Boy, Fishing Rods, although he joined late, but we'll not tell you off. We'll not keep you in for detention, Fishing Rods. El Grande, Dan, Tom, Davey, Paul Cox as well. Shout out to you as well for joining the channel. Stu, Tony Timebridge, I like that name. It's a good name. And anybody else? Ricardo Voss, who give a shout for Diame as well. He did have a redemption arc. He was a bit of a figure of fun. Wasn't great in the championship, but then was brilliant when we got back to the Premier League. So shout out to him as well. That was a good suggestion. But yes, so thank you very much for those people who watch us live and those people who catch up later on. Of course, stay tuned. There's loads of games coming up. So we'll have a match preview, which Scott, you've just said that you're going to record that for the Brentford game. And of course, the Always Smiling Faces lads will be back. Possibly not Easter Monday, maybe they might do the Tuesday. I suppose we'll have to wait and see on that one as well. I think Matty has done it between the lines with Brentford as well. Scott, have you seen that? I think that's
I think he's recording that right now. I think that's happening as we speak, so that'll be up as well. What else we got? Can you chat on the audio?
Yes, of course. Audio podcast. Who was on this week with you, Scott?
It's myself, Joe, Ian, and Harry. It's the same for every week. We also we picked our NUFC 5-a-side based on the video that the Tyne put out earlier this week about with Murphy and Longstaff, where they had to pick theirs. But we had a few more rules. It burned Harry a little bit because it was only within the era that they were watching, so he couldn't pick some of the players that everyone would normally pick, shall we say? Because he's just a youngin', it's Harry. And we've also got, obviously, there was a reaction went up earlier today for last night's game as well.
Yeah, nice one. So, of course, we've got that. Loads of stuff going on. So please stay tuned to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel for all of that. Ian, thank you for joining us. What's your plans for the game against Brentford on Saturday?
I might have to. I know a guy that can maybe sort us out, but it's
who's got a dog.
I'm very, very busy for once in my life this weekend. Obviously, with the Beanie staff, got Joey, so we're out gallivanting all weekend, and then I'm going to see Super Mario's on Monday. So,
nice, very nice, lovely, jubbly, nice one. Scott, what about you? Where will you be watching the match from?
I'll be watching it here at home. We get the 3 o'clock kickoffs over here, so it will be on via Play with De Boer in the crew. So I'll be watching it in Dutch over here. No worries over that. Yeah,
nice.
I don't understand a word of it, but I'll be watching it in Dutch.
Yeah, it's 3 o'clock kickoff, isn't it? So that's
so the embargo's on.
3 o'clock takeaway 5. So right, yeah, I'll be watching it midday-ish. Yeah, is that right? No, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock in the morning kickoff. Yes.
9, 10 o'clock,
so I'll be having my breakfast and watching the Tyne. Cannot beat it. Absolutely lovely. So thanks again, lads, and thanks again for watching to all those people. And like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button, join, become a member. £2.99, you get access to the Telegram group and all of that as well. So thanks very much. Have a really good Easter weekend. Hopefully we carry on this win and run so that Tottenham is just a parade of third place joy. Happy days. How are the lads? Thanks very much, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone. Ta-da.